Well, we've made it to episode 5, the second to last episode in this series, and this one was certainly a doozy. Obviously, things get pretty crazy in the final moments of this episode, which we'll definitely talk about, but also I want to talk about some new clues that we got in this episode, which I think further prove and show that Blair and the other ladies were behind the murders out at Salal. So let's break this thing down, and as we do, please be sure to share your thoughts down in the comments. Also, I will be hosting a live stream with you all out in the community after the finale airs, where we'll talk about what we thought of the finale and the series as a whole. So if you want to be a part of that conversation, be sure you're subscribed. All right, let's get to it. Episode 5 opens with Navarro picking up Julia's cremated remains, and after the intro, Liz meets with Otis at the lighthouse. Liz asks what Otis meant by Clark going back to the night country, and Otis seems to not even remember saying that. He said Clark was saying crazy stuff like she's awake and that he has to hide because she's out there. Liz goes on to ask about how Otis got his injuries, and he tells the story from 30 years ago about a cave where a man died trapped in the ice. Otis and the other men ran out for help, but there was a blizzard, and Otis says he heard something screaming or howling, and the other men started following the noise. Otis tried to go after them, and the next thing he knew, he woke up in the hospital with his injuries. This story reminds me of something Peter and Liz were saying back in episode 2 about how blizzard-like conditions can cause damage to soft tissue and cause delirium. So I'm thinking that this pretty much explains the Salal deaths, considering Otis has the exact same injuries as the scientists. So going back to this video where I talk about a Reddit theory that says Blair is the killer, I think this all means the Salal men were forced outside by Blair and the other ladies, where they were told to strip down and then left out there to die to the elements. We also get another clue proving this point later in the episode, so I'll talk about that here in a few minutes. Alright, so next Liz pulls out a map of the area and asks Otis to point out the entrance to the cave system, and Liz says he's going to help them get in. But Otis says he needs her to help him get well, to which she says, "I can't get you any heroin, you know that." Which is how we know she's definitely going to get him some heroin. Navarro and Liz head out to the caves, but when they arrive, they find that the entrance has been destroyed, preventing anyone from getting inside. And since this cave is on Silver Sky land, it raises further suspicions that Silver Sky was involved with Annie's murder. Next, we have the continued tension between Peter and Kayla, but this time she kicks him out of the house for working so hard to provide for his family, I guess? Anyway, Peter heads over to his dad's where he hopes to crash for the night, where he hears Hank playing guitar and singing from outside his window. While he's singing, we see police in riot gear, including Navarro, arrive at the Silver Sky mine for some crowd control as things appear to be getting out of hand at another protest. Navarro is working the crowd when she sees a vision of Annie just before turning to find a cop pulling Leah to the ground. Leah calls out to Sherry, who just runs away, some girlfriend she was. Then Navarro pulls the other cop off of Leah, which causes the two of them to duke it out. Liz gets an interesting call from Ted about the protest, saying Kate wants answers, and Liz reluctantly agrees to meet with her and Ted, but she's not sure why Ted's going to be there. After they hang up, Navarro calls to inform Liz of what happened with Leah at the protest, and she tells Navarro to take Leah to the station. Liz runs into Peter, who hands her a file and says, "This is what you've been looking for." Peter says the LLC that funded the station, the one that traces back to Tuttle United, has dealings with another company named Norbank Securities, which is a founding partner of Silver Sky Mining. Liz says this certainly makes it look like the mines fund Salal, who, in return, pushes out bogus pollution numbers for them. Snack time! Liz then heads over to Silver Sky, where Kate and Ted show her footage of her and Navarro at the mine entrance on Silver Sky land. Liz says it's police business that has to do with the Salal investigation. She says Otis Heiss told them about the cave as they were asking him about Raymond Clark's whereabouts. Kate says, well, the good news is that this isn't a murder case after all, and Ted goes on to say that the forensics came back and that the men most likely went out to watch the last sunset before the long night and were caught in an avalanche where they froze to death. Liz shares the information she learned about the mine funding Salal, and Kate pretty much just brushes it off and seems to not even be mildly concerned about it. After Kate leaves the room, Liz tells Connolly the Annie K case and the Salal cases are linked, and that Annie was killed in the cave on Silver Sky's land. Connolly brings up the Wheeler case and says it was logged as a murder-suicide, but there was no suicide, was there? Then says, this case is closed, and Liz says, what happened to you? A woman was murdered. I found this to be interesting because all the scientists just died too, not just Annie. I just feel like it would have made more sense for her to say something like, what's wrong with you? Several people have been dying around here. I don't know, this That whole thing was just weird to me. Next, Hank meets with Kate, where she says Danvers is not going to let it go. She says Liz is looking for the place Annie was killed and that it's important that she doesn't find that cave. Kate alludes to Hank doing something about Otis when Hank says he did something for her before and he never got promoted to chief of police like she promised, which she said was out of her hands. Hank says he's not a killer, and Kate says that's not what she's asking and says drug addicts go missing all the time, and then ends the conversation by saying, "You do this and the job is yours," and then says, "I'm counting on you," which is the same thing she said to him the first time we met Kate back in episode 2.
I'm counting on you.
Next, we see Navarro washing her clothes at the laundromat, thinking she found hair in the washing machine that disappears when Kayla approaches her. Eddie comes by with another local man and hands Navarro the rock she found out at Oliver's place. The man says his grandfather told him to run away if they saw those because they were a warning for Anders for breaks in the ice that could swallow people whole. The man says as kids they would go down into the caves and his grandmother was furious about it, saying the night country was going to take them. And this is actually a very important piece of information that I'm going to talk about later in the video as I give my theories as to how I think this is all going to end. During this scene, Blair enters the laundromat and we see her folding clothes behind Navarro. I think this is a bit of an Easter egg since we know the Salal men's clothes were folded out on the ice, and we see her here folding clothes as well. So I think this is another subtle clue that Blair was involved with the Salal murders. Navarro goes to meet with Liz and says she knows how to go into the caves now. They can go to a high point and dig in from above, but Liz tells her this is all over. She explains what Connolly said about the forensics and that their investigation is being shut down. Navarro pushes that they should go out anyway, but Liz says Connolly knows about Wheeler. Navarro says she doesn't care and that she's going to go anyway, and after arguing with Liz, Navarro also releases Leah from her cell. Hank and Peter talk about a time when Peter, as a child, fell through ice while ice skating, and how Hank had saved his life. He says on the way to the hospital, Hank just had to keep Peter awake, and then just says, "Family stuff, right?" and walks out. This was super odd. I think this was another attempt by Hank to get Peter to prioritize his family and Hank over work and Liz, but it was just like a really weird way to go about it. Later we find Rose and Navarro digging in the ice so Navarro can dump Julia's ashes, putting her back in the ocean where she wanted to be. Navarro then hears something and starts walking towards it, and as she does, she flashes back to her war days and almost falls into the sea when Rose comes to her rescue. Liz heads back to the station evidence room where she takes something, then runs into Hank in the hallway where she asks if he talked to Connolly. After seeing the look on Hank's face, she pulls Peter into her office and asks if he told anyone about Wheeler, and he denies it. Liz guesses Peter's computer password and insinuates that Hank probably got into it as well and found everything that Peter had been looking through in his search for answers in the Wheeler case. Liz and Peter go back and forth about asking the right questions again, and after showing Liz proof that someone had tampered with evidence files, Peter finally asks if Liz and Navarro killed Wheeler and made it look like a suicide, to which Liz responds, "As smart as you are, you don't know when to stop asking questions." This is another silly moment for me because Liz was the one who's like, "All right, you want to ask questions? Go ahead, ask questions." And then he's asking questions. She's like, "No, wrong questions. You got to ask the right questions," which is what she's been doing with him this whole season. So then he finally asks the right questions and she's like, "Come on, man, you got to know when to stop asking questions." Like, that got literal like belly laughs from me when I was watching this. Liz then says Peter can't stay at Hank's and gives him a key to the shack behind her house. Hank steps in and Peter tells him to get away now that he knows Hank can't be trusted. We cut to Eddie's where Navarro slips in and climbs into bed so as to not have to be alone at her place, and we see Peter moving his stuff into Liz's shack where he's definitely very alone. Liz stops by to get Otis and says she got what he wanted and pulls some heroin out of her pocket. They get in Liz's truck and she calls Navarro to tell him they're going to head to where Annie died. Liz takes Otis back to her place and he heads to the bathroom with the drugs as Navarro makes her way to Liz's and sees a little girl pointing, just like we saw with her mom, Anders, and others. Liz hears someone at the front door and calls out to Navarro, but finds Hank instead. He says Connolly sent him for Otis, and when Liz says she's calling Connolly, he grabs her gun and says to hand him over. Otis tries to leave and Hank pulls a gun on him and says he's gonna do this the way Liz did Wheeler. Liz says they can still fix whatever's going on with Hank, and he says that Liz turned Peter against him and she can't fix that. Otis tries to leave again and Hank shoots him in the back and tells Liz to back up before shooting Otis again, this time killing him. It's at this moment when Peter walks in from his shed and asks what's going on. Liz tells him to think about it before doing anything, and he keeps his gun drawn on Hank, who's asking Peter to help get Otis to the truck. Peter doesn't move and Hank says, "You should know something. I didn't kill Annie K. I just moved her body. Blood is blood, Peter. Remember that." and as Hank aims his gun at Liz, Peter shoots him. Navarro finally arrives to find the situation and stops Liz from calling Connolly because she knows he's in on it. Navarro hatches a plan to cover up what happened by moving the bodies and putting Hank somewhere he won't be found. Peter agrees to the plan and tells Liz to go help Navarro at the caves while he cleans up. Navarro tells him after he's done cleaning, take the bodies to Rose and ask her to take him to Julia. And the episode ends with Liz and Navarro heading out towards the caves. Alright, so this episode is definitely improvement over the last two, with that pretty insane climax there at Liz's house. It's no surprise to me that Peter chose to protect Liz here. I mean, Hank hasn't been really a great father up to this point, and also Peter's character just wouldn't do anything else here. It makes total sense that he would choose to do what I think most of us would consider to be the right thing here. So as we head into this final episode, it looks like Peter's going to be busy cleaning up this situation and disposing of the bodies out at Rose's, and we're going to be seeing Liz and Navarro venturing into the caves where I think they're going to find Raymond Clark. And here's why I say that. When Liz found Otis, he told her that Clark had gone down to hide, and when Liz asks where, he says the Night Country. Well, in this episode, the man at the laundromat told Navarro that they called the caves the Night Country. So if Clark went down into the Night Country, this means that he's down in the cave system. From there, I'm assuming they'll question him and we'll finally learn what really happened the night all the men went missing. Most of all though, I'm hoping we get answers to all of the supernatural elements, like the importance of the spiral, all of the visions Navarro's having, the importance of the one-eyed polar bear, and much more. So I'm going into episode 6 cautiously optimistic, and I'd love to hear how you're feeling after this episode and what your thoughts are as we move into the finale. So share those thoughts and theories down in the comments. Thanks for watching. See you next time.